Let's chat with Disco George. We're back at it, and today I am bringing you the author of Riders in Disguise, an awesome book that is from the 1980s. Remember the 1980s? The 80s were pretty wild, and Patrick just has captured the book in a fantastic way that you have to read. Patrick, welcome to the show.
What's up? How you doing?
How you doing, my friend?
I'm good.
I'm telling you, it's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah. It's been a little minute since we hung out the last time.
I'm telling you, the last time, we were breaking bread with some good family and friends.
Yep.
And I remember we were all chatting and you talked about the book.
Yeah.
And look, now all of a sudden we're here. Can you believe this?
Yeah. I've been talking about it for so long. It's weird to see it actually in print.
I know. Well, tell us. I saw on social media that you actually read at the Books and Books. Tell us about that experience, because it had to be surreal.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The launch event was on September 15th at Books and Books in Coral Gables, so the flagship store, I believe they call it. And it was a great night. Pretty packed house. I didn't realize that many people were going to show up. And I was introduced by my publisher, JJ Callagrande from Jitney Books. And, I just went up. I read a chapter from the book and answered a few questions, did a book signing afterwards. And it was the show of support was amazing. I thank everybody that came out that night. It was a lot of fun.
Who was out there? Were your parents there?
And my parents were there. My fiance, Alexa.
Shout out to Alexa.
Yeah, shout out to Alexa. And a lot of friends. Some of my students from where I teach at, and also just a few people that just seemed to be walking by. Billy Corbin was there, the director of Cocaine Cowboys. Yeah, who was actually a huge inspiration for the book. So it was just a great night overall.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw the videos and you were just beaming.
It was one of the, from a professional standpoint, it was one of the best professional nights that I've ever had. Like, just as far as I've been working on this book for a decade almost, like from the time that I had the first idea of it to now. So to see it in print and see people buying it and having to sign it for them, it was a very surreal moment.
So tell me, you are pretty young. So how did you do the research? Tell us a little bit about how you said Billy Corbin was an inspiration, but you had to do research for this. So tell us about that.
It's the reason why it took me so long to write it is because I was born in the 80s, but I wasn't an adult in the 80s. So the stuff was happening that I'm writing about was happening while I was alive. But I wasn't, any part of it. So when I got to college, I started reading a lot about Miami from the 80s, and I saw Cocaine Cowboys, Billy Corbin's documentary, and that documentary blew my mind because I didn't realize that the city I had grown up in had this crazy 80s history. And so I just started reading more and more into that, and it sort of just illuminated a lot of the history of what Miami is. And and after learning enough, I realized that I had to put my own 2 cents into this. I had just had so much to say about it. So that's where the idea for the book came from.
I could personally tell you, I was around in the 80s too, obviously.
Yeah.
And one of the things, obviously I was young in the 80s. I was probably in my teens. But I started noticing a lot of sports cars like Lamborghinis, the Mercedes, all the high-end cars. And I lived by Coconut Grove. Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, this is the streets of Miami have become like an exotic car show. Yeah. So, and of course the news was pretty also pretty shocking at times. Yes. I remember there was an incident at Dadeland. I'm sure you heard about that.
Yeah, actually, the incident you're talking about is the first chapter of my book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first part of the book takes place on the day of the Dadeland massacre, and I basically just tell it from the four different characters' points of view. Just how crazy that day was, because that's really was the kickoff to everything, to the entire decade of violence and destruction and and flamboyance.
Yeah, and I also heard that also was when the police realized what was really going on, and they're like, we have these little revolvers, we're gonna have to up our arsenals.
Yeah, I have a moment in the book where one of my characters, he's a homicide detective, and he comes up on the white van that they used when they were shooting up everything, and there's a military grade machine gun in the back, and he looks at his captain and he pulls out his revolver and he's like, I have this, like, what am I supposed to do against that? And so that's when they really started to having to hire more people and up their arsenal, and it's sort of the book sort of talks about how the police started getting militarized, or had to get militarized because of what was going on, and just how that led into just all of the sort of issues that Miami had throughout that entire decade. So that stuff is just fascinating to me. So I can't wait to finish the trilogy so I can show people the entire
so there's
story.
a part 2 and 3. Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us, who is your favorite character in the book?
All right. Well, there's 4 characters. One is a Puerto Rican journalist named Tina. She works for the book's version of the Miami Herald. I didn't want to get sued by the Herald, so I changed the name to the Miami Tribune. But so she's a journalist for them. We have a homicide detective named Ralph, a trafficker, a guy who gets sort of dragged into trafficking by his wife's uncle. His name is Tommy. And then we have a little boy from Liberty City named Rig. So Rig is actually my favorite character because he's kind of the one that I'm basing everything around, because I kind of want to show this in this book just how cocaine and just the 80s sort of drastically shifted everybody's life, no matter what part of the city you were from. But it especially affected people who were living in the ghetto areas because of the crack pandemic that sort of started out of it. So I just wanted to show, how all of their lives become sort of intertwined by this overlooming craziness that's going on in the city at that time.
Let me ask you, how do you feel the community, or overall, it's been almost 40 years later. Do you think that the community has gotten safer?
Oh, for sure. Yes. I mean, going from 1982, when Miami was the deadliest city in the entire country, and I think they had something like 600 homicides by the summer. The city now, I wouldn't say Miami is the safest city. I mean, because any major city is going to have its level of crime. But the Miami that I live in now, and the Miami that I've lived in, since I was in high school, is drastically different than the 1980s Miami. Just through all the research that I read, the riots that took place through those times, things might seem bad, but when you look back at that time, it's definitely better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you include part of the riots also in your book?
Yeah, actually. So part 2 of my book is the Liberty City riot that took place in 1980, after the Arthur McDuffie murder.
Right.
Yeah. So the second part is completely about the riot, and just from all those different characters' points of view. And it especially affects Rig, the little boy, because he's living in Liberty City when it happens. So he has to watch, a lot of violence happen around him. He has a friend who sort of buys into the violence and is sort of dragging him into that street side of living. So, his story is the one that really resonates with me the most out of all my characters. Even though I love all of them, I love all my characters.
Obviously. I think I heard that there was an inspiration also from a movie.
Yeah. Moonlight. Yeah, Moonlight. Moonlight. I saw Moonlight when it came out in theaters, and it blew my mind. I'd never so I grew up in the 90s watching a lot of movies that had, that were their central characters were black, right? But I had never seen one where they had handled the idea of a kid growing up in the ghetto with a mother who was a crack addict, or a heroin addict. I don't know. She was just a drug addict, and they handled it with so much sensitivity and empathy and caring for the main character that it was something that sort of just really resonated with me. I actively cried in the theater watching that movie. Oh my God,
really?
Yeah, so it really affected me.
But they say it's a really,
it's a really good movie. So when I left the theater that day, it kind of cemented in me that I wanted to sort of handle my main character Riggs. I wanted to handle his story in the same way. So that was a huge inspiration.
It's incredible how theater and you can mix together the reality and you could come up with these fantastic stories.
Yeah, it's what I love about creative writing. It's why I teach it. It's why I've always been a reader since I was little, very, very young. And so I guess this has always just been part of me. But when I got into college and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I was a computer science major when I got into college. And I hated it. So I almost dropped out of college thinking that, this isn't for me because I didn't have anything I was passionate about. And then, I don't know, one day I sat down and I wrote a short story just on a whim. And I had a lot of fun. And so I took a creative writing class at Miami-Dade, and that was it.
Wow. Do you remember the teacher's name?
Yeah, actually, she just retired there. It was really surreal when I got hired because I work at the school that I graduated from.
What was her name?
Marta Magellan. Marta Magellan. She just retired not too long ago. She actually has a children's book out right now. I don't know. I forgot what it's called, but shout out to Martha. And yeah, she was still working there when I got hired, and she was at my book signing too. So that was at my book launch. So that was like a full circle moment. That was really cool. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how little things, amount to the path, and sometimes you really never know. You're like, oh, let me just write something down, and all of a sudden your whole trajectory changes.
Yeah, literally. I remember the day that I was sitting in a Barnes and Nobles in West Kendall, the Barnes and Noble, the only Barnes and Nobles that's still like around. I was sitting in the cafe there, and I was just jotting in a journal, and I wrote a story about, I don't even remember what it was about, but it doesn't even matter what it was about. The process of writing it was what I lost myself for like 2 hours just writing, and I realized that it's my passion. So yeah.
And did you enjoy that at a younger age, like where you were in high school?
Yeah, actually, it's just, I don't know. I when I was in elementary school, I used to write all the time. My first novel was a 20-page story that I wrote when I was like 8 about a werewolf. So I thought it was a book. Obviously, I was 8, so it wasn't particularly good. But I was doing it from back then. I don't know why it didn't click until I was older that was my calling. I just kind of ignored it. I thought everybody liked to write and read, I didn't know I wasn't unique. So when I got older and got into college, I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
I think it's a maturing thing, When we're young, we're a little wilder.
Yeah, I was too.
You were a little wild when you were younger?
Yeah, I was. I had my slight rebellious stage, and during that time was when I was really like lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So the thing I think that sort of brought me back down to earth was writing. Was the pursuit of that and wanting to and realizing that I wanted to go all the way with it, get a master's degree, and really pursue it.
And what age were you at that point?
When I got serious about it?
Yes.
I was about 19.
19?
Yeah, 19
That's
when I
actually
realized.
pretty young.
Yeah, I know. I looking back, I realized how young I was, but I remember I felt I don't know if it's growing up in Miami, I felt old already at that point. Like I'd already done so much.
Well, it's funny you say that because I compare like myself to my son, the way we brought him up, and I'm like, a lot of the things that I did when I was younger, like just say driving.
Yeah.
I remember I was like at 13, my dad, I was telling him, oh, can I drive, like on the side. Yeah. By the time I was 15, I had read the book. I memorized it. I got my learner's permit. And when I told him, I said, hey, are you going to get this? He's like, I don't need that. You're still driving me around.
Yeah, I've heard that actually. It's funny. I think I blame Uber. I think that's what it is.
Well, that's one of the things. But yeah, it's funny how I think we had no choice to grow up earlier than we should have.
Yeah, just living in the city.
Oh my God,
the things that happen.
I could tell you a story. Back in the 80s, I used to go to Shenandoah Junior. And everybody was like, oh my God, you're going to go to Shenandoah. You're going to go to Shenandoah. And I was like, what's the big deal? It's just a school. And once I got there, I realized why everybody was. And you would see drugs and people would smoke openly. And it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I went to Killeen, High. Yeah, so I mean, Killeen wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a particularly bad school. There's like a level throughout all the schools in Miami. There's a level of underlying drug use.
Let's say a percentage.
Yeah, there's just a percentage of bad things that happen at every high school in Miami. But so I think part of the problem is that there's just so many people in the city, and my high school graduating class was. I don't even remember the number, but it was a lot. It was a lot of people. So it's just the city's so big.
Well, I remember my class, we were all a bunch of goody two shoes. So by the time we got to 9th grade at Shenandoah, the school was clean.
Yeah. Nobody was doing anything anymore.
Nobody was doing anything.
Well, yeah, because the 80s were the height of the bad stuff. So
yeah. But then I could see the 7th graders were a little
coming up behind you.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Let me ask you, now that you're teaching, you've been teaching for Miami-Dade for over 8 years. How has that been?
I love it. It's one of those things like the writing. Well, the writing, obviously, like there was signs that I loved writing since I was a kid. Teaching just sort of fell into my lap because I did not. If you had asked me when I was younger, do you want to teach? I would have said no, just flatly no. While I was in graduate school, they offered me a fellowship, a teaching fellowship, and graduate school is expensive, so I took it, and I was like, all right, fine, please pay for my
always take the
tuition.
Opportunity.
Exactly. But I had to teach. That was part of the requirement. So they just sort of they didn't give me any training. I don't want to say that.
Let's rephrase that.
I don't want to say that. The way that the fellowship works is that you spend your first year being mentored. So I had a mentor for my first year, and then the second year is when I started teaching. But because I'd never wanted to teach, I felt like I got just thrown to the wolves my first day because I never had imagined what it was going to be like. I sort of just walked into the room, and then I saw all these students staring back at me, and I was like, crap, I got to talk to you. And so after a couple of weeks, I realized that I loved it. Like it was awesome. And so when I finished graduate school, I moved to New York for a year and tried to work in publishing and hated it. And so the next thing, I had the teaching experience. So I applied to Dade. They hired me as an adjunct, and like 3 years later,
what is it they hire you
as an adjunct part-time.
What's an adjunct? I never heard
just
that.
Part-time faculty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I for 3 years I worked as that, which that job is not that much fun because it doesn't pay that well. But I guess I kept doing it. I started having fun doing it, and then at some point they opened up a couple of full-time positions, and so I got hired full-time, and that was about.
And what subject are you teaching?
English and creative writing. Specifically, my passion is creative writing, but I also teach freshman composition.
Okay, that's cool. I also heard that you actually use music to create poetry. To teach that, can you a little elaborate on that?
Yeah, in my ENC 1102 class, I teach the genres. So I teach short story fiction, I teach poetry, and then I teach dramatic literature. So like stage plays. So for the poetry section, when I first started teaching as an adjunct, they tell you what you have to teach. So I was teaching the classical Shakespeare and stuff like that, right? And I noticed just every semester I'm teaching it, and I'm just seeing eyes falling. Just everybody's falling asleep. Just people are not paying attention, and I realized like I wasn't really having fun teaching it either. Because I mean, no knock on Shakespeare. Shakespeare has amazing qualities from a writing standpoint, but as far as relating to to an 18-year-old in 2023.
Right.
That's not, Shakespeare's not going to do that. So I realized one day that, you know, I love music. Music is my thing. Why not use that to teach poetry? So I still teach the basic elements of poetry, but I do it through music now. So I try to do a wide range. I go from, you know, like Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, all the way up to like modern hip hop, you know, J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. So I sort of do a wide range of songs, and we look at them from a poetry standpoint, because in my opinion, music is poetry.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I know you brought your guitar.
Yeah.
just give us like maybe like a couple bars of what you would teach, how you would do.
Oh, well, I haven't really taught my own music, like my own originals. I have my own music that I play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear that then.
Okay. All right. So hold on.
Just get ready, guys. This is gonna be good.
Let me move this back.
All right. You got it?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So like I said, I write my own music. I do perform some covers, but most of what I play is originals. So since we're talking about my book, I have a song that sort of has a similar theme to it. It's called Suburban Drama. So it's a story about this guy named Max, and I'll just play it.
All right.
Max woke up early on this morning with a thought stuck in his head. Stomach growling and his mouth tasting bitter. Max groaned up out of bed. Getting dressed, settled in his daily stress. His fridge sitting bare as hell. Power cut off the past few months and the bulbs places got the smell. See now, Max was dealt a bad genetic draw, got the most dramatic history, and it's haunting the things he saw. We've all heard the story. Max left that morning determined to end his stomach ache. Primal urge to place some good reason what he needs he'll have to take. So he trudges into the corner store and opens up a bag of chips. But before he can get one in his mouth, the whole place explodes. Max tried to explain his piece, hunger pain controlling his mind. But the clerk wasn't having any of it as he picked up the phone line. And so Max ran like a bat out of hell with the chip still in his hands. And the clerk out hollering like a banshee, you'd think Max stole his land. Right then the cop pulled up and parked right out front. And as Max passed, the cop took a glance and quickly pulled his gun. All the people watching the scene unfold saw the cop take off in pursuit, and they assumed legitimate cause when the cop aimed the gun to shoot. His gun straight bucked, and the bullet hit Max above the butt, and he hit the floor like a bag of bricks, and his left leg gave one faint twitch, and the chip spilled all over the road, and crumpled back, clenching Max's cold hand. Max lay with his eyes at the sky, feeling no gap in between pain and surprise, and the cop, ignorant of his disgrace, came in straight yelled in the dead man's face, and the crowd gathered around the cop and started screaming for him to stop, and screaming started to elevate as the crowd realized that it was too late, so they got angry and picked up some bottles and whatever else they could think of, us all saying. Soon the whole area erupted in a major display of human destruction. You might have heard about it on the news, depends on which news source you get your news through. It was last time before the no, not that one, the one with the crowd wouldn't even matter when the riot stopped and stood together with the rebels like screaming, why can we, why can we, why can we stop this, stop it, why can we, why can we, why can we stop this? Max is buried on the other side of town, funerals packed as hell. Crowd sad and scared, knowing that they could have been the one who fell.
Awesome. Woo-hoo! That was fantastic.
Thanks.
Yo, you got to put that in the movie. You gotta do a cameo in your own movie singing that.
I gotta finish recording it. I'm actually recording all of this right now.
So tell us how's your music career going?
That's interesting because that one I wouldn't say I'm taking it less seriously. It's just I want to keep it more of a hobby, so I don't actively try to turn it into a career. Okay. But I do pursue it like as just a hobby. I'm constantly making new music, so and I'm always practicing with my guitar. But so I'm in the process of trying to record some of this stuff. Okay. So hopefully I'll have some of that stuff.
Well, you do play around town.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I've played a couple of shows around town at a couple of shows at Tea and Poets in Sunset Place. Okay. And I've done a couple of open mics. I'm looking to do some more shows eventually. Right now, I'm just having fun practicing and playing.
Well, it looks like you're living a well-balanced life, my friend.
I try.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
No problem, man. This was fun.
I'm telling you, it was fun, right? It was quick.
It was. Yeah, it was.
Do you have any shout-outs before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a couple of people.
Just hit it right over there.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of people.
Camera.
We have a shout out to my fiance, Alexa. I love you. Shout out to my family, my parents, Pauline and Patrick Anderson, and to my sister, rest in peace, Colleen, and to all my students. Hopefully, they get to see this. You guys help me to stay young.
And if they want to follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Patrick Anderson Music, just one word. I'm also on Facebook. My Facebook page is Patrick Anderson. Also, my stage name is Autonomous Entity. So you can find me on SoundCloud. I got a bunch of music on there. And then my Instagram account is pretty much the one that I paid the most attention to.
And last but not least, where can they buy your book?
My book is available on Amazon. You can look for it on Amazon. You also can go to jitneybooks.com. That's where my publisher, Jitney Books. Yeah, so it's available Kindle and in print.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Everybody, if you enjoyed the show, please give me a like. And if you really liked it, please